Hello everyone, so welcome to Zelin's class, and today we are going to talk about parametric differentiations. I think this word for most of you it's like you haven't learned this before and you've never heard of this name probably, but I think if I told you what is it about, then you will be very clear about it because we have touched a little bit in AS level. So what is parametric differentiation? Well, there's an equation, a function that there are three variables such as x, y, and t, and this function is usually we have two equations such like that. So we know the relationship between two of them, like we know the relationship between x and t, and we know the relationship between y and t. And the questions are usually about find the relationship about x and y or something, or to differentiate. So, what we usually required is to use chain rule when we are solving this problem. This kind of problem, well, I think most of the questions, about 95%, you need chain rule. So what is chain rule about? We revise this again. It is there are three variables, right? X, y, and t, and we can get the relationship between y and x from the other two relationship. Okay, so now let's check do an easy question. So let's check do we understand or not. So find dy over dx for x equals 2t cubed and y equals t squared minus 5. Well, firstly, for all of those equations, it will usually state that our answer should live in terms of t. They will usually state that. So, if we want to find dy over dx, so like from here, so from this equation, what we only can get is dx over dt, right? And from this equation, we can only get dy over dt. So, our aim is to find dy over dx, so we need to use these two. So dy, because dy over dx is equal to dy over dt times dt over dx. See, that is our chain rule. We are using the chain rule here. And so, because here we will only get dx over dt, so it doesn't matter, we can just flip it. So we can now, so let's do it. So dy over dt is equal to 2t here. It's just differentiation of this. So it is equal to 2t. And here it is equal to 6t squared. So now we have dy over dt equals 2t and dx over dt equals 6t squared. However, we need dt over dx, which means that we need to flip this. So it becomes dt over dx equals 1 over 6t squared. So now let's time these two, which we will get equals 2t times 1 over 6t squared, and we cancel one of the t and we cancel the 2's, so we will get 1 over 3t, and that is our answer. So are we clear? Yeah, I hope you can understand the basic idea about this now. Okay, so that is an easy question, and let's try a medium question. So it's a curve, so it's like a parametric equation, a curve that it's x equals 3t and y equals t cubed plus 4t squared minus 3t. Find the two values of t for which the curve has gradient 0. Okay, so now it says gradient 0. What does it mean? Well, it just means that dy over dx equals 0, right? We learned this before, and we have met a couple of times now. Okay, so what we need to do is to find dy over dx. So according to this question, we should find dy over dt, and also we should find dt over dx, so we can times together. So let's find dy over dt. So it is just this equation differentiation, which will becomes 3t squared plus 8t minus 3. And for dt over dx, we can't solve it straightly, so we need to find dx over dt. So dx over dt, we can see that it is equal to 3. So which means dt over dx is equal to 1 over 3. And now, so we have dy over dx equals to dy over dt times dt over dx, which is equal to a third times 3t squared plus 8t minus 3. And that is our answer. No, I mean, this is not the final answer, but it's just a part of it. And it is equal to 0 because the gradient is equal to 0. And now let's solve this quadratic equation, which is 3t squared plus 8t minus 3 equals 0. And let's use our cross multiple, which is 3t minus 1 and times t plus 3 equals 0. So t is equal to 1 over 3 and negative 3. Okay, so that is our final answer. And yes, that is the medium level question. I think this part is, so because we have talked about chain rule for a couple times now, so it should be quite easy for you guys. Okay, so that is the medium level. Now let's do a hard level question. The parametric equations of a curve are these two equations for t is greater than 0 and smaller than pi over 2. So now if we see pi over 2, it means that this is in radian. So our answer should also live in radian. So first part is show dy over dx equals sine 4t. So now let's do part A first, which is dy over dx. So the same thing, if we want to find dy over dx, what should we do? And here, see here, we have y and t, so we will have dy over dt for sure, which means we should write it in dy over dt times dt over dx. Okay, so now dy over dt, which is the differentiation, so let's write here, which is dy over dt, dt, should be equal to 2 sine 2t differentiate. And how do we differentiate this? We need our sine differentiation of sine formula now. So if you are not quite sure about it, you can go back and check in my previous video. So it's sine ax plus b differentiation equals to a cosine ax plus b, and that is our formula. And so, which means that here 2 it leaves here, and sine 2t will become 2 times cosine 2t, which is equal to 4 cosine 2t. And for dt over dx, we can't find it straightly because it's dx over dt. So let's find dx over dt first, which is dx over dt equals, well, ln 10t dash, which we learned this also, we also learned this in previous videos. So it's quite similar to sine, but it becomes tangent t 1 over tangent t times tangent t dash, which is 1 over tangent t times 1 over cosine squared t. So this is also a formula. So before doing this part, you should be quite familiar with all of those trigonometry differentiation and logarithm differentiation. And so we get our dt over dx is equal to tangent t times cosine squared t. Okay, so now let's combine these two. So our dy over dx is equal to 4 cosine 2t times tangent t times cosine squared t. Okay, now we need sine 4t, so which means we should change tan t into sine form. So what is tangent t equals? It should be equal to sine over cosine, and most of you should all know that, which becomes sine t over cosine t times cosine squared t, and we can cancel one of the t, cosine t, which will become 4 cosine 2t times sine t times cosine t. And now we need our trigonometry formulas again, which do you know that sine 2 alpha equals to 2 sine alpha cosine alpha. So this is a formula. And if you are not quite sure, you can go back to the trigonometry session. And so now there we see that here we have sine t times cosine t, and we have a 4 here. So let's divide 4 into both 2 and 2. So let's do it. So let's do 2 times sine t times cosine t times 2 cosine 2t. And here we can combine this into sine 2t, which is sine 2t times 2 times cosine 2t. Okay, from here, what do you think? Is it quite similar to this formula again? Yes, it's exactly the same. So now we can combine again, which will get sine 4t. And let's look at what we required. We require sine 4t, so which means we have finished part A. Okay, so part A is done. So now let's do part B, which is, let's do part B. What is part B? Hence show that at the point where x equals 0, the tangent is parallel to the x-axis. Okay, so the question has mentioned that x is equal to 0. And here we have an equation which is x equals ln tangent t, which means our now ln tangent t is equal to 0 now. So this means that because so now we have tangent t is equal to 1, because like e to the power of 0 is equal to 1, which we have tangent t is equal to 1. And because t is greater than 0 and smaller than pi over 2, which means that t is equal to pi over 4 only. And now this is a very important part, because if we know that t is equal to pi over 4, and we know that dy over dx equals sine 4t, and because dy over dx is the differentiation of the equations, and what we required is the tangent, and the tangent is exactly equal to the differentiation, so which means that let's substitute t equals pi over 4, which is sine 4 times pi over 4 equals sine pi, and that is equal to 0. So what does this mean? This means that the tangent is 0. And what does the tangent equal 0 mean? This means that the tangent line is a constant. So what does a constant mean? It means that the line is a horizontal line, and it is parallel to the x-axis. So which means we have we have done the problem. Okay, so that is the end of today. And if you are currently doing GCSE maths, you can go to a channel by Daniel Dallas, and his explanation is actually very perfect, and I really like his video. And don't forget to subscribe my videos. Yes, subscribe my videos, and give a like, and I'll see you tomorrow.